Welcome to our study of Jigme Lingpa's Treasury of Precious Qualities. And as always, kindly recognize how what we're studying here is part of a process, an indispensable process of continually expanding our understanding of our reality. And particularly us in the modern world who are continually confronted with what we could call a very ignorant view on reality. It's so essential for us that we never stop listening to the teaching and listening with really great respect and openness and mingling our mind with the teachings. That's why we so often talk about in the teaching the value of the Dharma and the individual mingling. So we do this not for our own sake, but because there is so much suffering, and we have the privilege to get to the bottom of suffering, not just address particular issues, but really getting to the very bottom of the delusional experience of samsara. So with that in mind, and recognizing the value of what we're doing, we're now presently looking at the section in Jigme Lingpa's Treasury of Precious Qualities that is about the developing a greater state of mind on the basis of what we call the four boundless attitudes, which are loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. So in doing so, we begin with invoking Jigme Lingpa's wisdom, Jigme Lingpa's wisdom body. And here then, the source of love and compassion for all beings, who knows all that is knowable, emanation of Longchenpa, heir to a treasury of mind thermos, sky-like yogin of the vast expanse of luminosity, Jigme Lingpa, at your feet we pray. So we're looking at then the root text, which reads, in the pool of Hinayana, the minds of Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, the element of bodhicitta lies unstirred. It is aroused by those who teach them voidness and compassion, and setting sail upon the ocean of the Mahayana, they voyage to the island of omniscience. So the Hinayana naturally is the inescapable ground from which we progress towards enlightenment. And that is the path of individual liberation. However, as we understand it and can understand the Hinayana, it can also refer to the predilection or the inspiration to settle into cessation. And that's where we then refer to here the minds of the Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, the listeners and solitary Buddhas, as beings that settle into this Nirodha or Gokpa. And here we would say they can actually remain in this condition of cessation for a very long time. The conditions of samsara, they have been ended. And as such, we refer to it as nirvana. But at the same time, this is not complete perfect awakening. And many of you would have read within the Mahayana teachings and the liturgies that we have, we very often we say, may I develop the bodhicitta that goes beyond samsara and nirvana. Sishi ledral semkya do, that we may arouse bodhicitta that goes beyond the condition of confusion and also this condition of settling into the condition of cessation. And that's where then we engage on the ocean of the Mahayana. And we aspire that rather, yes, when we engage that kind of attitude, it's that we aspire to go beyond just a personal peace. And we would say those that settle into this condition of peace, they might for a very long time remain in such a peace, but because their Buddha nature is still there, then we would say on the basis of the compassion of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, or the potential of their Buddha nature, then the light of awakening stirs within them, and eventually they do engage in the path to perfect enlightenment. Anyway, here we'll look at Kangyur Rinpoche's commentary. What was it again? Yeah. So Kangyur Rinpoche says, the Mahayana path, since its characteristic attitude and practice are limited, aimed solely at the pacification of one's own defilements and suffering, the Hinayana is likened in the root verses to a pool of muddy water. As yet, the seed of the Mahayana, the potential for bodhicitta, lies unstirred in the minds of the Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, and they enter the peace of cessation. But they are at length roused from this by the Buddhas, who are guides to the wisdom of emptiness and universal compassion. With the bodhicitta just thus awakened, the Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas embrace the Dharma of the great vehicle, as deep and vast as the sea itself, and set out for the land of jewels, the omniscience of Buddhahood. And then verse 2 reads, giving, discipline, and patience, diligence and concentration, in themselves are not regarded as the first 5 paramitas. But if a lowly thing is touched by alchemy of means and wisdom, it is like iron transmuted into something of great worth. So here we are talking about the paramitas, but with the presence of prajna, then these actions, ordinarily just giving, discipline, so on, which in and of themselves are not something that brings liberation. If these, however, if they are permeated by or embraced by the greatness of the compassion and wisdom of the Mahayana, and particularly then if they're embraced by the 6th paramita prajna, then it's as if something which is quite ordinary, and giving, discipline, patience, diligence, and concentration, they're all part of our ordinary worldly virtues. Yet, without a greater vision, they remain ordinary. So just like iron. But once there is the wisdom and the means, then yes, then they become the causes of perfect enlightenment. So Kangyur Rinpoche says, as long as generosity and the other 4 virtuous actions are not combined with wisdom, they do not constitute transcendent perfections, the paramitas that bring forth enlightenment. Nevertheless, as when alchemy transmutes base metal into gold, the union of wisdom and skillful means can transform these lesser virtues into the invaluable causes of great enlightenment. So what we mean with transcendent perfections is that these qualities that are incredibly valuable, generosity and so on, they nevertheless are ordinary, and for them to become transcendent perfections, expressions of Buddhahood, and also the causes for awakening, that takes place when we have the union of wisdom and skillful means, meaning that there's insight into the nature of reality, and there's an insight that connects with ultimate reality, and that's where then these paramitas, these actions, the first 5 that we have here, that they then become the skillful means. So this is where we appreciate then the value of the greatness of the Mahayana vision. So then we say here, excuse me. Therefore, wherefore, true bodhicitta is the fusion of compassionate means and wisdom that cognizes emptiness. The 4 unbounded attitudes prepare and lead to it. It comes from cultivating bodhicitta, both in aspiration and in action, and from training in the precepts. So, for us to engage in this path of the what we call the paramita yana, the vehicle that takes us beyond to awakening, then that for us to do that, which is essentially the unity of both the wisdom, the insight into reality, and the greatness of mind, that is the skillful means that is imbued with this compassion, these paramitas that we just looked at. For that to take place, we first need to have these 4 unbounded attitudes. For example, when we look at the bodhicitta prayer in the Longchen Nyingtik Ngöndro, we would say that we engage in this in order to for us to liberate sentient beings into the space of luminous natural awareness. For us to do that, we generate awareness, or we generate bodhicitta on the basis of these 4 unbounded attitudes. So this enables us then to cultivate bodhicitta, both in aspiration and in action. And this is where we talk about bodhicitta in terms of what we wish to achieve for sentient beings and also how we actually do it. So Kangyur Rinpoche says, bodhicitta is the indispensable prerequisite for achieving non-abiding nirvana and is the fusion of the skillful means of compassion and the wisdom of emptiness. Let's see what we have here. It's probably a commentary by Kind Gyatso. It says here, on account of great compassion for all beings without exception, the practitioner escapes the extreme of nirvana. Owing to the wisdom of realizing the emptiness of all phenomena, the practitioner escapes the extreme of samsara. Authentic bodhicitta, the wisdom of emptiness, endowed with the essence of compassion, is possessed only from the first bodhisattva ground onward. So we can, of course, from the first bodhisattva ground onward, yes, then there's the qualities of the genuine qualities of the bodhisattva. But nevertheless, prior to that, we can still see how this mind is generated on the basis of the these 4 attitudes. So presently, how we prepare the mind in order that it can embrace bodhicitta, we do so with these 4 boundless, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. So according to the master Buddha Gupta, the 4 attitudes are called boundless because their referent is the boundless aggregator beings, because they bring forth the boundless accumulation of merit and wisdom, the boundless qualities of Buddhahood, and the boundless wisdom of non-duality. So this is from Kangyur Gyatso. So the referent meaning where we generally talk about the 4 attitudes, again, loving kindness and so forth, where we're familiar with them, but when they're directed not towards just a few select, but to all sentient beings, then they are referred to as boundless. So, so it says here, it arises, meaning bodhicitta. It arises in the mind through repeated training in the 4 boundless attitudes, whereby a person's thoughts and actions are transformed into the path of the Mahayana. The 4 boundless attitudes are therefore to be seen as guides. Once the mind is purified by them, the cultivation of bodhicitta in aspiration and action, and the training in the precepts become possible. So this is where these 4 are so essential for us to engage in the bodhisattva path. And that, you could say, really defines the spirit of the whole Mahayana community. It defines the spirit of the Mahayana Sangha. It defines the spirit of the teachers and the students. These qualities of kindness, the qualities of compassion, the qualities of sympathetic joy, and the qualities of equanimity, not just for a few, but for all sentient beings. This signifies really the entire culture and spirit of the Mahayana. On the path of accumulation and joining, meaning the 2 first of the 5 paths, this bodhicitta, the union of skillful means and wisdom, is, however, no more than a foretaste of the fully authentic bodhicitta that arises on the path of seeing. So like we say, it's only at the level of the first bhumi, on the path of, that we achieve at the path of seeing, that then the complete bodhicitta manifests. But for that to take place, we need to train and purify the mind with these 4 boundless attitudes. So here we read, love means wishing for the happiness of others, like a loving mother cherishing her child. One's body, wealth, and virtues, all amassed, one gives for others' benefit, while training to endure the harms that they inflict. So the first love, loving kindness, or however we choose to think of it, that is simply just that we wish that others are happy. So Kangyur Rinpoche then comments, love is essentially the wish that beings who suffer, for instance, in being deprived of the bliss of the upper realms, and that refers to animals, hungry ghosts, those in the hells. And this, of course, also when we live in the human realm, it's very often that we come across profoundly base human beings, you could say, who naturally live in hell, or who live in poverty, or who live in stupidity. And that's where we simply have that wish that they should have happiness, these beings. So it's not just, you could say, the hell realms and other abstract themes, but also those in this world that we can see live and perpetuate the aggression that is the cause of suffering, the poverty and desire that's the cause of the hungry ghost realm, and the ignorance that is the cause of the animal realm. So it's that we wish that these beings, they immediately, temporarily, and also ultimately might have happiness. The love that a bodhisattva feels towards other beings resembles the love that a mother feels for her own dear child. Therefore, our person, our possessions, and our merits gained in the past, present, and future should all be devoted to the benefit of beings in the immediate and ultimate term. So that's where we sort of what we strive for, and that's really how we dedicate and think of all our possessions and our merit and so forth, that it's really there for others. Then Kangyur Rinpoche says, in addition, we should train ourselves to endure with love even the harm that others do to us, returning them good in exchange. So of course, inevitably, due to causes and conditions and so on, those that we love and those that we mean well, including all the beings that might be acting in strange ways, when we extend our love to them, then it's not likely that all of them will be returning this love that we extend. So someone is asking, I heard once that one is considered to embark upon the path of accumulation only if bodhicitta effortless arises in one's mind. Is that so? No. This is where clearly that's not the case here, because here we are only talking about real bodhicitta only arising at the level of the first bhumi. But of course, also right from the start, we might generate a mind of compassion. So if we refer to that as bodhicitta, yes, then definitely that's something that then yes, that constitutes the Mahayana approach to the path of accumulation. But here then Kangyur Rinpoche is making sort of a little bit of a distinction, and Jigme Lingpa also, between just, you could say, the general sense of love and compassion and so forth, and the actual bodhicitta as really being when there is the experience of wisdom. So the definition here is slightly different. When we purify the mind with the 4 immeasurables, is it permanent? Oh, that's good. That's a good question. We don't really say that we arrive at a place of not turning back until the 8th bhumi. So when we purify the mind with the 4 immeasurables, we're really talking about right now us beginning to train. So that's where we begin now, and we train, and this then becomes, you could say, the foundation of our journey in the Mahayana and so forth. And even though we cultivate and have the vision of bodhicitta and the wisdom at the level of the first bhumi, we say it's not until we arrive at the 8th bhumi that we are at the what we call the 3 pure bhumis of not returning. So 5, compassion is a powerful state of mind, an inability to tolerate the fact that others suffer. Beings in the 6 realms are entrapped by sorrow and its cause, and seeing this brings tears to one's eyes. So the Bodhisattva never protects themselves from the raw pain that others experience. So the Bodhisattvas never there and saying, I can't take any of this. The Bodhisattvas are simply not able to tolerate that others are suffering. So that's where they become awakened. They become, you could say, animated and wishing to benefit others. And that's where, when Bodhisattvas realize this suffering that's basic to the beings of the 6 realms, they act. They're not overwhelmed, but they are touched by the suffering. And so that's where it's not just a philosophical, but it's something that deeply affects them. So that's where we say there's tears, it brings tears to their eyes. So it says here, the essence of compassion is a valiant resolve to free absolutely all beings from their miseries, beings who are by nature entangled in the 3 or 8 types of suffering. So in general, we talk about the 3 kinds of suffering as the suffering of suffering, the suffering of change, and all-pervasive suffering. The 8 types of suffering, I'm not sure what that is. It is a sensation felt in the very roots of the heart, an inability to tolerate the fact that beings suffer. It is as when a man unhesitatingly jumps into a filthy pit to retrieve his child. Such compassion is incapable of leaving matters simply as they stand. It is a resolute determination to free beings from their pain. People with such compassion see that the beings of the 6 realms are like cornered deer, unable to escape from the pain arising from their ego clinging. Now, what we're saying here is that the Bodhisattva is moved by the fact that right now they see sentient beings who might be acting in ways that they, out of their ignorance, is perpetuating their own suffering. And that's where we look at, we're not looking at the compassion there is not for sentient beings who are noble. We're not like saying, oh, I'm going to be sympathetic to the persons who are really noble, but it's being sympathetic to beings that are creating their own suffering. There's this story that I very often repeat from Paltar Rinpoche or Khenpo Ngakchong. He tells this story about when Paltar Rinpoche and his students in a forest were practicing, and one day there was a hunter that came by and was pursuing a deer, and all the students, they sort of got angry at the hunter, and Paltar Rinpoche says, you got it completely wrong. The hunter is the one that should be the object of your compassion, because he's the one who's perpetuating the cause of his suffering. Due to his ego clinging, due to his wanting something for him, and in pursuing the deer, he is the one who's really like the cornered deer. He is perpetuating suffering. He's the object of compassion. So that's where, when we're talking about understanding sentient beings and the compassion for sentient beings, we're not just being compassionate to the nice beings, but for all sentient beings that are creating their own suffering. And so Kangyur Rinpoche continues, and with tears of compassion in their eyes, these bodhisattvas strive by every means to liberate those who would never otherwise be able to free themselves. So that's compassion. 6, joy or sympathetic joy Joy is to delight in others' pleasure and success. It is to cultivate the wish that they all have happiness. It is a joy one feels when they achieve it for themselves, and it is the wish that they should never be deprived of it. So this is the opposite of jealousy or resentment. Sympathetic joy is a sincere pleasure, untainted by jealousy or a sense of competition at the happiness and prosperity that others have. So we might see persons that have incredible wealth and are incredibly happy. And that's not where we want to say, oh, but that's impermanent, or, it's not going to last, or even sort of that jealousy, how can they afford to, build such a big house and all of that, that that's where we're happy that others have happiness. It doesn't mean we become stupid and are blind to the cause of suffering and all of that, but there is this ability to simply just be happy when others are happy. So it also, Kangyur Rinpoche says, and it also involves the cultivation of the excellent thought. How wonderful it would be if all beings had perfect prosperity and well-being. Like, wow, there's somebody who has it so good. Might all beings have that? It is a sense of delight that, due to their past karma, beings have attained happiness, and gives rise to the wish that they never lose their contentment and bliss. 7. So this is equanimity, also referred to here as impartiality. Impartiality is freedom from attachment and hostility, when sides and factions are all seen as equal, when enemy and friend and neither are treated with an even-handed kindness. We should practice these 4 attitudes, remembering that all is without true existence. So we can see that who is our friend and who is our enemy, that just is something that's ever changing, entirely due to particular causes and conditions. And that's where, with that, then we understand that it's not like there are beings who are intrinsically going to be our friends, intrinsically going to be our enemies. Everything is ever shifting on the basis of causes and conditions. And that's where we say that all these beings and the conditions, they are without true existence. And with that insight, then we apply these 4 boundless attitudes. Kangyur Rinpoche then says in regard to that, he says, impartiality. Now let's actually see what we might have a commentary here. The Tibetan word tangyum has 3 possible meanings: a neutral feeling, sorwa tangyum, meaning the neutral feeling, just in terms of what we experience, like, if I put my finger through the air, there's a neutral feeling. The conditioning factor of evenness, duche tangyum, not sure what that refers to, and the boundless equanimity, tseme tangyum, boundless. And that's, in this context, the 3rd sense is intended, meaning this equanimity with regards to all beings, all sentient beings. So here then, Kangyur Rinpoche says, impartiality or lack of bias is freedom from the fixed, conventional attitudes of exclusive attachment to the objects of one's love, parents, relatives, husband or wife, etc. Hatred, so it is the freedom from these attitudes of attachment to these, and also freedom from hatred toward enemies and those inimical to one's interest, and indifference towards those who fit into neither of these categories. Impartiality is the ability to see that all beings, regardless of their associations and alignment, are equal, and to consider them all, friend and enemy or neither, with the same benevolence. So here we're not talking about a lack of emotion in the sense of the awakened emotion of compassion, caring, and so forth. We're not talking about equanimity here, or impartiality, as a lack of anything, but it's the presence of compassion, of loving kindness, of sympathetic joy to all beings, So that's where this equanimity has nothing to do with being unfeeling, but it does mean to have the feeling of compassion for all beings equally, impartially. The four boundless attitudes are thus the wish that others be happy, the wish that they do not suffer, the joyful desire that they never lose their happiness, and the aspiration to view them all with an open heart, free of partiality. It is important to understand that the object of the practice, namely other beings, and the form of the practice, that is to say, these four attitudes, are devoid of true existence. They are like dream visions or reflections in a mirror. In other words, this training should be performed in a state that is free of clinging to a truly existent subject, object, and action. So when we say freedom from a truly existent subject, object, and action, it means that we, as we engage with these four attitudes, love, compassion, joy, and impartiality, as we engage with these, we do that without thinking, I am being partial, how do you say, I'm practicing this in regard to so-and-so, and I'm doing this. Of course, we have that naturally, but we should try not to fixate on it. And that's why we have so many remedies for this duality. Of course, we have meditation, but we also have the practice of dedication, for example, when we dedicate the merit, so that we don't sit back with some sense of, I have been incredibly benevolent to doing this for so-and-so. Okay, so here's somebody found this. Oh, thank you. Okay, hold on. There's some comments. Could the 8 types of suffering be the same as the 8 fears of hope and fear? No, presently, I don't think so. Buddha is said to have identified 8 causes of dukkha: birth, death, decay, disease, association with the unpleasant, separation from the beloved, when one does not obtain what one desires, and the 5 aggregate matter, sensations, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. Okay, great. Thank you. Right, yeah, I don't think it's the 8 worldly dharmas, but it more sounds like some of these 8 here. Then also somebody has found from the path of individual liberation, the 8 types of suffering are listed as birth, old age, yeah, same as above, that's good. Sickness, death, okay, the 4 great waves of suffering, coming across what is not desirable, yeah, the association with the unpleasant, not being able to hold on to what is desirable, namely separation from the beloved, not getting what you want, when one does not obtain what one wants, and the 5 aggregate matter, and general misery or all-pervading suffering, and that would be, you could say, fixation on the 5 skandhas. So yes, that's very good. So I hope you'll pardon me, but as you maybe can hear, I'm a little bit tired. I've been doing a workshop all day, so I'm a little bit sort of low in the batteries. So I think if it's all right with you, I hope you'll pardon me, but I think we might leave the study at this point here today. So we've covered the sort of the basic understanding of the four boundless. So I hope that's already quite something. That's a that's a big topic in terms of what we can practice. Yeah. So I think we'll just conclude here today, if it's all right with you. So, through all our births, wherever we may be born, may we be endowed with the 7 good qualities of the higher realms. As soon as we're born, may we meet with the Dharma and have the freedom to practice it properly. At that time, may we please the holy gurus and practice the Dharma throughout the day and night. Realizing the Dharma and accomplishing its essential meaning, may we cross the ocean of existence in that life. Thoroughly teaching the holy Dharma in this world, may we never tire of accomplishing the benefit of others. By this vast benefit of others, without partiality or bias, may all attain Buddhahood together. So, thank you very much. Thank you.